here. Good evening. I'm hoping that you are working on your teacher empowerment and leadership project with wild abandon and that you're feeling good. I listened to Dr. Todd's class this morning. I was sorry that I missed it because I was working the polls yesterday, and as you know, the polls close at 7:30 and I got away about 8:30. So anyway, I'm a little blurry-eyed today, but that's okay. I want to just quickly run through the AAPTEL one more time because when I was listening to Dr. Todd and the discussion, I was a little concerned because we've talked about task 1 and 2, and I'm not sure why we're not hitting on all cylinders about it. So I just want to go back and start over thinking about that. The literature review, it says you must have at least 5 sources. Now, the reason you have to have at least 5 sources is that you have 5 things you're researching. So we want to make sure that you have one strong research piece about each of those 5 areas. And it says, of course, if you want to be proficient, 5, and if you want to exceed expectations, you can do 6 or more. So anyway, the literature review, we've talked about this, but we're going to talk about it again. There are 2 separate issues that you are researching. You are researching what is going on in the classroom and what is going on school-wide. There are 2 of those areas that are classroom-oriented. There are 3 of those issues that are school-wide. Now, all through this process, you've got to do the research on these 5 things, 2 categories of 5 things. Then you're going to have to analyze the data you collect about those best practices in those 5 things. And then you're going to have to write a needs assessment for those 5 things. And then you're going to have to write an action plan that includes 5 things. Now, it sounds like I'm trying to be rude, crude, and socially unacceptable, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get you to see that when you do the research is the foundation of the whole thing. And if you do the research right, the rest of it will just fall into place. You research each of those areas. Once you get those areas, you take the information from those areas and do your checklist. Now, the checklist needs to come directly from the research. If you do Marzano, you're going to have a laundry list. If you do Darling-Hammond, you're going to have a laundry list. You may do any one you like, but those, Whitaker, he's out there too, but he's more on the school-wide stuff. You can get some school-wide stuff from him pretty easily. The in-classroom stuff, Darling-Hammond goes both ways, and Marzano is mostly focused on the classroom. And he does a lot with what administrators should do when they go into classrooms and how they get classrooms better. But it's mostly classroom focus with Marzano. Okay, so we've got the research. You've got those areas. You have to then create the checklist. Now, the checklist, I was just sort of trying to play with one at the dinner table this evening, actually. And I did that because I was trying to get a visual that I could explain to you. Because if I send you one, they'll all look alike. And some of your schools, this may not be exactly what you need. But you have your literature review with your 5 items. Think about what you want to have this look like. Think about the end use of this document. You are not doing this checklist to fulfill a requirement. You are doing this checklist because you are going to go into classrooms with your little clipboard and a blank copy of this checklist, and you are going to observe, and you are going to record only what you see. You're not going to record what you think you might see tomorrow or what you saw last week. You're recording what you see in that classroom on your checklist. So, as you're doing your research, you want to be very clear about what you put in your research as the best practices that your researcher is espousing, so that your checklist has things that a good teacher should be doing every time. It's like, I can go into a Latin teacher's classroom and I will assure you, I can figure out if she is using best practices. Though I do not speak Latin, but best practices are best practices in any subject area. They're about organization. They're about helping kids understand what they're supposed to be learning. It's about following the practices of teaching, practicing, independent work, grouping, all those good things. The research should tell you that. And if you go to Marzano, I will assure you, you will find what needs to be on that checklist. So your research is just tied to that document just like this. You can't get away from the research when you're doing the document. Okay, so what I said was, here's 2 columns. Now it could be a front and a back, but it could be 2 columns. Just think about 2 columns. Top of one, it says classroom observations. The top of the other one, it says school-wide empowerment and leadership. And you draw a line between the 2 of them. Okay, never more shall they touch. Okay, so let's talk about the classroom side first. How many of those 5 things are supposed to be on the classroom side? How many? We talked about it.
2.
2. Good job. Thank you. 2. Yes. Okay. So you know that you're going to have 2 broad areas. You don't want to smash all of these things together. For the actual checklist, there is no reason to separate these. I will tell you. So some of you will say, why do I have to do it? It doesn't say I have to do it. It doesn't. I'm not going to do it. Okay, so if you say that, that's fine. But when you get ready to write about this, you have to write about 5 things. So why wouldn't you organize your paper based on the 5 things you've got to write about later? Okay, so I would say the first one might be, what was it? Results-oriented professional development. Okay, only you know what professional development is going on in your school. But you know from your research what the research says about translating professional development into the classroom. Okay, so you know what professional development's going on in your school. You know what the big focus is from your school improvement plan. You know what you're supposed to be driving toward to improve in your school. So when you go in there, try to write some things on the checklist about implementing professional development in the classroom that you can observe, because If you don't observe it, you can't write it on the checklist. You got to observe it, okay? So as you're reading and doing your research, you're looking for, what does the research say about professional development and its implementation in the classroom? Okay, and you might have 3, 4, you should have more than one item on the checklist from that, okay? A, B, C, D, however many. I'm not saying how many, I'm just saying you should have more than one item on the checklist about any topic, okay? Because you want to observe carefully in your classroom. Okay, so we've done one.
Dr. Tillman?
Yes. Yes.
So if I'm observing, so I'm a math teacher, and if I'm aware of the professional development that they have had. If I'm in a Spanish teacher's classroom, I don't have any idea of the staff of the professional development had. So how do I know if they're implementing it or not?
You have professional development that's going on in your school about grouping practices, don't you? And about using manipulatives, about
we don't have anything like that going on in our school.
You don't think teachers, it's hard for me to believe that people don't have something going on that says the kids should know what they're going to focus on. That's not something that is expected. If your principal comes into your
That's not plan at all.
They don't care if you have the objective on the board. They don't care if you have an organized plan. They don't care. I think they do.
Yeah, but they haven't been doing professional development about that.
I would think so.
No.
Okay.
The teachers were just told that they had to do that, but they weren't given any professional development on.
Does the research say that they should be doing that?
Writing the objective on the board?
Should the professional development
probably somewhere
being translated into the classroom?
Oh, yes, definitely. But my point is that when I go in those classrooms, I'm not going to know if they are implementing the professional development they've had, because unless I've had it with them.
If you go in that classroom and everything is willy-nilly and they don't have an objective on the board, you just mark it up, because you're going to find that that's what happens when you implement professional development. Professional development, you should be able to see that professional development is being translated into the classroom. And if you don't see that, maybe that means there needs to be more professional development. I don't know. But
so it doesn't need to be something specific. It just needs to be, if they are doing things correctly, they're probably implementing something they were taught. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, now I understand. Okay.
So you got your list, and
Thank
what
you.
I'm saying is you don't just want to do 2 or 3 things. You want to do as many items as you can, because a lot of those items are going to be good. You know, I think almost in every classroom in schools that I've been in lately, teacher has some way of letting them know, here's the objective for today. This is what we're doing. And there's teaching, and there's guided practice, and then there's, some independent, and then there's the teacher coaching. You see that teaching process going on. So the more items you can pull from the research on your checklist, the easier your observation is, and the easier your data analysis will be later, and the more useful the data will be later. So you have a second item under classroom, and that's teacher leadership and decision making. And that ties a lot to the results-oriented professional development. And we are tempted to just make a long laundry list, but if you try to separate it into the professional development part and the teacher decision-making part, later on, when you have to write about those as two separate things, you'll have some things to write about. Because if you just collapse this list and talk about, this is what I saw in the classroom, it's going to be hard for you then pull out the professional development piece so that you have at least something to talk about in that, that group. Okay. Now, before we go on, what questions do you have about the research for the classroom side of the checklist? Questions. I love entertaining questions. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. No questions. Okay, so let's look at the school-wide side.
I have a question.
Yes, okay. Yes, Ms. Adcock.
Well, so would it be better looking at if we divide so that we're looking at the classroom and the school and we're dividing up the 5 things, would it be better that we're sectioning that out as well? So you're saying in the classroom efficacy is seen in this way, and dividing it out like that, would it be better?
Each of those 5 things should be under either classroom or school-wide. And the reason the efficacy one goes under the school-wide is that it says, I believe it says, empowering the staff. So that means it's a more global thing than just the classroom. So the efficacy one really should be on the school-wide side. Okay.
But
okay,
would
that
it be better if it's being very specific?
Yes, you need to be very specific, because the 3 things that go on the school-wide are probably the things that you're going to need to write the survey about. Take your survey, because you're going to read the efficacy and empowerment research, and you're going to write a few things down, you know, A, B, C, D, E, however many. These are the things that the research says exemplify best practices in empowering teachers through efficacy. Okay. Then you have a whole different section on teacher recruitment, placement, and mentoring. Now, you don't want to lump all of that business together, because it's one topic, but there's 3 subsections. People can be good at recruiting, and then they are very poor at mentoring and placement. You may get great teachers coming in, and you stick them with all those really at-risk kids, and you don't give them any support, and next year they either go into the business world or they change schools. Okay, so those 3 things are 3 separate things, all related. So it is one area. It's the recruitment, placement, and mentoring of teachers, of new hires, new teachers, okay? So when you're doing your research, make sure that you put down a couple of things about what does the research say about recruiting teachers? What does it say about placing new teachers? What does it say about mentoring new teachers? And you should have a couple of things about that from your research, because you're going to translate those into questions. For example, one of the things in recruiting is sometimes they give a signing bonus. So you can ask, did you receive a signing bonus when you came to our school system? Were you promised that you would not be given all the bad boys without books because you thought, you know, there's some really bad things we do to new hires, and we need to be careful and not do it because we run them away. So, and then the mentoring, were you assigned a mentor? How often did you and your mentor meet? Because I'll bet the research says something about how often mentors and mentees should meet. Did you have common planning? Did your mentor observe you? I mean, all of those questions come from the research that it should just jump off the page when you start reading it. And if you search for teacher recruitment, teacher mentoring, placing new teachers, you should be able to come up with some of that information very easily. But I'm asking you not to just put one item on the sheet on your survey about recruiting. Put a couple about mentoring, a couple about placement, so that when you get to the next section and you start analyzing the data, you can see, well, we're really good in these, but looky here, we do have a little problem here. Here is the gap. Well, if you only have one thing, well, you may not find a gap. And guess what? You've got to have 5 things, because all through this, it wants you to address all 5 areas. So you want to have something to address. Okay. So, and then the last one is approaches to evaluation. Well, you read the evaluation research and you put down, how should evaluations be done? Do they follow the protocol? Do they stay the whole period? Are you on a timeline? If your principal doesn't follow the state mandates and the district mandates for evaluation, they'll have a hard time getting rid of you ever, because you have to do it according to the timeline. And you hope you never have to do that. But if you're going to be in administration, it's probably going to happen sometime in your career. And you have to document. And you have to follow the protocol down to the letter. You cannot go in 5 minutes after the class starts. You can't leave 5 minutes before it ends. You can't go out to make a phone call. You've got to be there and observe. So what does the research say about the proper way to evaluate? And why do we evaluate teachers? It's not to catch them doing the bad thing. It's to improve the teacher, which means you need to have a lot of items in your toolbox. Because if you have an average teacher, you can just pull a lot of things out of your toolbox that's just common knowledge, because all of you are good teachers or you wouldn't be sitting in this class. But if you have a superstar in your school and you just keep telling her or him, you're just doing a great job, just keep on doing what you're doing, that is not an evaluation. That might be the beginning of an evaluation. But what are we going to do with that star? Are we going to help them do presentations? Are we going to try to introduce them to doing some professional development? Are we going to send them to conferences to share information? What are we going to do? We're going to recommend them to be coaches. We're going to select them to be mentors. What are we going to do to lift up the excellent teacher? That's in the research. So all of that kind of stuff is what goes in the approaches to evaluation. And you need to have several things there. And then those things are what you translate into the survey. How many times were you evaluated this year? Did the evaluator stay the full time? Did you get the feedback at the appropriate time? Districts say how long it can be between the observation and the post. You know, you're supposed to have the pre, and then you're supposed to have the observation, and then the post. Well, there's a timeline for that. Do they stay within the timeline? Do you get appropriate feedback, or is it all, you're doing a great job, keep doing what you're doing? That makes us feel good for about 5 seconds. And then we wonder why we are still teaching. Because we want to do a good job, but we want to keep growing. How can we grow as teachers? And that's what this whole project is about, is teacher empowerment and leadership. Even if it's leadership within your department or within your team, we want to keep growing so we feel like we are professional educators that are giving back to these younger teachers that are coming on board and that need our support. Okay, so I've babbled about the research and how it directly ties to that form. So when you think about the paper that you're going to write, I think it's a lot like the last one, in that you should start out talking about the data collection strategies. How are you going to collect the information that you need? So you're not going to go and just rant on and on and on and start putting in data and all that. No, it's just really short. It's just a small statement of the strategies for collecting the data. Okay, then the process for identifying. After you've collected the data, then what are you going to do? What is the process of identifying the gap? Well, the process here again, you're not going to put the data in there. You're just going to talk about what you did. How many people did you observe? What kind of a time frame? Show us a copy. You know, here's where you would mention the checklist idea. You would have it in the little appendix, and you would talk about the survey that you would use, whatever, Survey Monkey or whatever, and put that in the appendix. Just a blank one, not the ones that are filled out, none of that. Just here's what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. This is what's going to happen. And then we're going to identify a gap and proceed to address that gap. Okay, so that's all that goes in that. But just give us a starter so we know where we're going. And then there you are. You've got your data, your review. And the review, you may have more than 6 pieces, because it would be better to do 7 or 8 and have a good checklist, because the investment of time to do a good research piece is going to pay off tenfold if you have a good checklist, because then the checklist is going to help the paper write itself almost. Okay, so we are beginning to analyze the data. That's going to be the next thing. And I would say maybe the title could be Data Analysis Classroom. And then you'll write a narrative about the first item, the first section. You know, we've got 2 sections, right, under classroom. So Data Analysis Classroom. Address one of the pieces, show the data, show what you did, finish all that, then go to the second one. Following that, you finished with the classroom stuff there. Now you're ready to show the data for school-wide. You've got 3 sections of there, so data analysis school-wide. Here's a section for each of those 3 pieces. You know, just keep those pieces either with subheadings or at least new paragraphs. Keep it separate because you're going to be so happy if you'll do that. Because when you get to the end, you're organized. Okay, so you need to have, when you do the data analysis, you can't wimp out and say there were no weaknesses. Something will be weaker than something else. Okay, you've got 5 areas. How many needs do you have to have? A minimum of yes, how many? 5. I see fingers. Yes, 5. You've got to have a minimum of 5 needs because you're analyzing 5 different areas. Okay, so there are 5 needs. Okay, so what questions do you have so far about that? What isn't clear? I just really want it to be clear. I try so hard to make it clear, because if it's not clear, you'll do the wrong thing and have to do it over, and that is not my goal.
I have a question about the teacher leadership section. I know you said that it goes under classroom, but since leadership is also part of school-wide, I mean, part of that.
Don't go there.
I'm sorry?
Just don't go there. Do the leadership in the classroom piece there. The leadership, the other is the school-wide. Teacher leaders are good teachers. Okay. Teacher leadership and empowerment in the classroom. Restrict it to the classroom. You have the other side to do all that.
But part of the research but part of the research is about teacher leaders. I'm sorry?
I said I don't want to argue with you about it. You can talk about leadership. You can go off on a rabbit trail, but when you bring it back around, make sure it's in the classroom.
Well, I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. Well, I'm just explaining as well as I can that everything on that side of that checklist should be observable and in the classroom. All the other stuff that you'd like to talk about leadership, put on the other side. Okay, give me an example of what you're talking about.
Well, in the research that I've done, when I've found articles about teacher leadership, it talks about teacher leadership in the classroom and teacher leadership in the school. And so it talks about both of those things.
Okay.
So in my research, and
some on the other side, you've got one source, but
that's what I was asking.
Both sides, but just make sure that the classroom observable ones are over there, and the same researcher is also talking over here. But don't mix up the two things. Put the leadership in the school-wide and the decision-making part of it in the classroom. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
The same source, but you can put it on 2 sides. Yeah. But you want to make sure that you still end up with the right number of references, because I'm sure the evaluator's going to go and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. So we want to make sure that we.
Well, no, that's fine. I've got about 15 right now, so I think I'll be okay.
I think you probably will. Okay, so other questions. So when you get into task 2 and you're analyzing and establishing the gap, remember that the needs assessment is going to have to come up with 5 things, that one thing in each area that seems to be something that you might want to work on. Okay? You understand the structure. The main thing is getting the research organized right. Is there a question about organizing the research? Okay. What about, let's look at when you get to task 3 and you start talking about the action plan. It's really important that you organize it so that it just reflects exactly what you've been doing. You've got 5 areas, so you're going to have 5 sections. You can use the same format that you've been using all along because that's what your improvement plan looks like. Most of you ended up with a pretty good looking improvement plan for the AAPTEL. So, just think about what that looks like, because I keep reminding you that in 605, you are going to put all of this together. Okay? I say that in its one simple sentence, but it means so much to you, because if in the end you're putting it all together, it needs to have the same format. Okay? So sometimes a project may not ask you for the same items, but you want to make sure they're sort of alike. Anytime it asks for the same items, address it in the same way, because in the end, you'll be happy that you did that. Okay? So when you do the action plan, it says in your rubric, works with others. Now, up to this point, you have been doing this work all by yourself, which means you can do it faster, right? Because good people can get out there and do some research and take notes and type that sucker up and get it moving, because you're only as slow as you want to be. You're not dragging anybody else along with you. So up to this point, you're doing this by yourself. But when it says works with others, that should be the flag that says, oh, we need a PLC here. And I heard Dr. Todd say it can be the same PLC, and it most certainly can. Or if you feel this is something that would be beneficial to a little different group of teachers, then you might sort of massage that group and change it a little bit, or change it a lot, whatever is good for your school. But you do need a PLC to help develop the action plan. And I don't like the word action plan, and here's why. When teachers get below standard, what do we put them on? We put them on an action plan, or that's what the research usually calls it, and that's what they call it wherever I've worked. But a teacher that is a star or a potential star, I always had them write a growth plan. And it's just one word, but it makes a lot of difference in how it's perceived by others. Action plan, just by its use in our profession, it has a negative connotation. So if I say growth plan and it says action plan on the rubric, please forgive me, because I've just said growth plan so much that growth plan just comes out. So as you're doing your growth/action plan, make sure that you realize you've got to address all those areas. 5 different things should be on that growth plan. Something that's going to be initiated to improve something from each of those areas. Now, you may decide that, usually students do decide, that in the classroom part, they tend to want to do more than one improvement area. And that's okay, but just remember that if you initiate too many new things, it's hard to monitor them. And I've said that before, and I'll probably say it again because it's so true. As an administrator, it's hard to keep your finger on 5 or 6 different improvements that you're trying to work on. So, you know, you don't want to go into a classroom and you're looking for 3 or 4 or 5 different things that you're trying to get improved. You're looking for things, 5 or 6, a lot more than 5 or 6, but I'm talking about things that need to be improved. So it's so much like what you did in the AAPTEL. You're going to just create a list of needs that you pull right from your research, and you're going to prioritize. It says, I think the word prioritize is used in your rubric. So if in the classroom you observe, you know, there are 10 things on your checklist or 12 things on the classroom checklist, 15, 20, however many, and you have 3 or 4 things that aren't really looking too good, you don't want to work on all of those. You want to prioritize them. You want to say that, you know, we've identified these things, but the PLC has selected this thing as the priority, so that you focus on that. And that's helpful to you too. You don't want to address all of the, if you have 4 or 5 low things, you don't want to address 4 or 5 there and then 1 or 2 in each of the other 4. You will have such a long action plan that, you know, you're covering yourself up in work that will not be helpful. Okay, so you're looking to your plan. It says, and I made some notes, as I said, at the dining room table, opportunities for teachers to assume leadership and decision-making roles. Okay, so there has to be something on your list from that area. So what is it you're going to do? I've had teachers say, you know, I don't know how people get on the school improvement team in my school. It's like the principal just selects some people. I'd like to be on that list, but I don't ever get to do that. If you get that kind of information on your survey, you know, that you ask questions to try to get that kind of information. Are there people out there that would like to be on leadership roles that they're never asked? Well, that's an important piece. So we're going to say, are there opportunities? Well, in that particular school, she did propose that representatives on the school improvement team be elected by department. And so the department elected. And I think the first couple of years, I think it turned out to be mostly the department chairs. But after a while, she told me that it did get to be sort of passed around more, that it became something that some of those unofficial leaders ended up becoming official leaders through the school improvement team. So, you know, it's things like that. Look at your school, see what those people say on the survey. What is the problem? What keeps people from assuming leadership roles? Is it they're not asked? Is it that they would like to have professional development? Is it, you know, what is it that's holding them back? Okay. And then strategies for building efficacy. That's one of the things it says. It says strategies for implementing PLCs, support and coaching emerging school leaders. Well, see, that's the one there that talks about mentoring and coaching and placing, you know, new teachers in appropriate settings and how to recruit teachers. Okay. All during this process, you are using multiple technologies. That's in that rubric too. If you just fine-comb that rubric and pull out all those words that are important, it will help you a lot, because they're expecting that you're going to use some technology here. And of course, you're going to do your survey, hopefully through technology. You'll do a presentation through technology. So you've got good opportunities to do it. And then, of course, 4 will be your reflection, and you'll be through. And you'll be moving on to different things in your next semester. So, what questions do you have about that? Does it make sense? I just struggle to try to figure out how to say it so that it makes sense and comes off the paper for you. When you read that rubric, I don't want it to sound like gibberish. I want it to sound like something that you understand. Okay. We have a tired group. Okay, so Dr. Todd had really emphasized that she wanted to try to stay on track. And I think that that means that the research in 1 with the checklist is supposed to be pretty much finished this week. So is that coming along well? Do you feel like that's going to be doable for you? Ms. Heatherly, is it? I know I'm asking you simply because I know I know that you've done a lot of extra stuff. So, is it going to be possible to do it probably this week?
Yeah, I think I'm good now.
Yeah. Okay. Because
as soon as I'm gonna ask. I'm fixing a couple of things after our conversation tonight, and then I'm gonna ask my peer reviewers to look at the list and to look at everything, and then I'm gonna be ready to go.
Yeah. And I think
mine is posted. I hope it's close.
Well,
I think my research is
Dr. Todd.
good.
I posted mine, but Dr. Todd said, yeah, you need to work on that
My checklist is might need work, but my research I think is okay.
Okay. I think that's the main thing is to, if you've done the research, then it should be pretty easy to pull out items that one would expect to see in the classroom. And I know
the checklist is easier to fix than the research.
Yes, I've been using, my issue has been with using Bulldog 1 to try to find information about Todd Whitaker and all of that. We have not had a lot of success with using Bulldog 1 like Dr. Lamb suggested and finding information about Todd Whitaker.
Well, I would say if that doesn't work,
that has been my struggle. And I was like, I didn't know if I didn't understand how to use Bulldog or I just was
I just would say wherever you can find the research, you just go out there and find it, because when you make the citation, you don't have to say where you found it. You just find that stuff. Okay? Yeah. Okay, if you can go to your local library, some of you are sitting in towns that have colleges, just sneak over to the library and check it out. Go online. I think all of those people have huge websites. All 3 of the people that I mentioned have huge websites with all kinds of information. And they all have written in the Kaplan, and they've all written in the ASCD journal, and they're everywhere in the literature. So just jump out there and grab it wherever it is. Don't take too much time doing that other stuff. Okay. I'm really appreciative that you all are really getting into the research, because this is what's going to make it easier for you. And the next thing that'll make it easier, if you just keep those 5 areas separate, because you've got to talk about them separately, and you've got to put them on your action plan separately. So you don't want to smash it together and then have to figure out how to pull it back apart. Okay? All right. So I think if we don't have any other questions, I think we must be done for tonight. And I just want to say I am so appreciative of you. I think there are 6 of you. I lost somebody a while ago. I can't remember. I think we had 6 a while ago. But it's really difficult, and I would just wonder, when you are working with your peer reviewers, I wish you would encourage them to come to Dr. Todd's class. If you don't come to my class, I'll try not to take offense, because I know you're busy. But Dr. Todd, she really does. She goes over, and I try to support what she says. And I know, and I'm saying this for those people who probably aren't watching and won't watch the video, but it really makes it difficult for your peers when you don't come to class or you don't watch the video, because you make mistakes it's obvious that you didn't come to class. And so your peers are waiting for you to do peer reviews. And I'm not sure some people know they're supposed to be doing peer reviews because they aren't on the timeline. And so for the rest of the semester, just really encourage your peer review groups to really be on task and help you out, and be just really, really adhering to that rubric. Tell them you want them to pull out all the
My
stuff.
peer review groups blow up my phone.
You said that before, and I just, I think that.
I was tutoring a kid to 31 text messages.
Well, I just think it's good practice, and it's very helpful if people will review with a critical eye and a strong heart. You know, you can tell people really tough things if you tell them in a nice way. So, you know, be good to yourself and be good to your other people. And I will see you maybe Sunday. If you have a question, come see us. I'm going to end recording.